Madam, we must have waffles. We must all have waffles forthwith.
The Coen Brothers are certainly way up there in the ranks of greatest American filmmakers, and I'd say every movie they've made at this point has been at least really good to great. And what makes them great is that it always seems like they're just making movies for themselves and affectionately throw nods to the movies and literature they love in them. And even their more mainstream or conventional ones are uniquely their own. And I believe the majority of their 18 films, as of this recording, are truly great. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who could make a stronger debut feature than they did with 1984's Blood Simple.
Well, if it pays right and it's legal, I'll do it.
It's not strictly legal.
Well, pays right, I'll do it.
And it's tough to pick a favorite, but for me it's a toss-up between The Big Lebowski and Raising Arizona. But one film they made that's definitely not considered a favorite of virtually anyone is 2004's The Ladykillers. So naturally, that's the one I'm going to be talking about.
Hold a number of other advanced degrees, including the baccalaureate from a school in Paris, France called the Sorbonne.
Sorbonne. Well, that fits.
Essentially, it's a modern-day remake of the 1955 classic The Ladykillers.
We supposed to make noises with these things? What kind of noises?
Shit, not noises, one run, music.
And if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. I mean, you can never go wrong with a dark comedy heist film starring the Obi-Wan Kenobi himself, Sir Alec Guinness, and an early role from another comedy legend, Peter Sellers. But asking anyone nowadays to watch a movie from the 50s is kind of a stretch, so this may be the only version of The Ladykillers they'll ever know. With the Coen Bros being who they are, you know they're going to make a movie in their own weird, Coen-y sort of way, even if the source material isn't their own work. The 1955 version takes place in London and feels very much like a Britishy British comedy of its time, in all of the best ways. The 2004 version is transplanted to Mississippi, and the ringleader of the heist is played by Tom Hanks.
Allow me to present myself formally. Goldthwait Higginson Doa, Ph.D.
A silver-tongued, literary Southern gentleman type who poses as a classical musician who rents the room of a kindly old lady as a front for a planned heist through her root cellar, which can lead to the cash room of a riverboat casino. He enlists a crew of equally absurd characters to pull off this seemingly simple heist, only to be inadvertently thwarted by this sweet old lady.
Hippity-hop music. You know they calls it hippity-hop music, but it don't make me want to go hippity-hop.
And the best part of this movie, without a doubt, is Irma P. Hall as Marva Munson.
Ph.D.
Like Elmer?
I beg your pardon, ma'am?
Bud.
I guess you could say she's the oblivious hero of the story, and the comedy that actually works in this film usually involves her. There are some pretty great scenes of her talking to the portrait of her dead husband, whose presence is felt throughout as he casts a stern and distrusting eye on the band of robbers. The back and forth between her and Tom Hanks make this movie as watchable as it is. Tom Hanks' character is so out of this world here.
Stupid boy. You very extremely stupid boy.
And he really goes for it, which makes me miss when he did interesting movies instead of Oscar bait biopics and whatnot.
4 pirates!
He's basically a cartoon character, and so are the rest of his crew. We get Marlon Wayans as a super irritating, stereotypical black guy whose part in the heist is working at the riverboat casino. He spends a lot of the time arguing with the explosives expert played by J.K. Simmons.
IBS.
You be what?
Irritable bowel syndrome.
Whose name is Garth Pancake. I guess that is kind of funny. And then there's a young Opie from Sons of Anarchy as Lump, who's basically the big dumb muscle type, except he's basically just a mentally disabled guy.
Oh yeah? Who looks stupid now?
And that feels pretty cringe. The last of the crew is the General, a mostly silent donut shop owner, and probably the most competent member of the group. His role is overseeing the tunneling into the cash room of the casino, and he's actually a pretty cool character, if not underutilized. Even if this movie is the Coens just coasting and thought of this as a paycheck film, it's still well made and would be a pretty solid film for a more unknown filmmaker. The music is good, it's well shot, as you would expect from them. It might just be that this was a misfire, or they wanted to flex their cinematic muscles in a more mainstream setting, and it just kind of flopped. Not that a Coen Brothers film ever really lit up the box office. Their quote-unquote comedies could be considered polarizing. I mean, Raising Arizona, which we all love today, was an early example of a broad comedy for them, and a lot of critics didn't know what to make of that. And The Ladykillers is probably what I'd consider their only pure comedy. Well, besides The Big Lebowski and maybe Oh Brother Where Art Thou, their previous film, Intolerable Cruelty from 2003, is a straight-up romantic comedy, and on the surface you would have had no idea they made it. And that movie is pretty good. Not that I watch many romantic comedies, but their next remake 6 years later in True Grit is a pretty great remake of a classic John Wayne western. Going into my rewatch of this, I was hoping I'd feel like this was a super underrated, slept-on gem from a pair of masterclass filmmakers, and that wasn't exactly the case. But I do have a soft spot for The Ladykillers and admire the oddity that it is in the Coen Bros filmography. Does this remake hold any sort of candle to the 1955 version? Well, not at all. What the original film does much better is making the cast feel more authentic to the world they live in. They aren't nearly as over the top, but they are comedic. There's still a hint of menace to them.
Mrs. Wilberforce,
Yes?
I understand you have rooms to let.
Especially Alec Guinness in the mastermind role. His devilish charm is felt throughout, and he just feels more dangerous.
Can't you appreciate that Mrs. Wilberforce is not a mere appendage to my plan? She's the very core of it.
And as great as Tom Hanks is here, he's just a little too likable in this role. Even though this movie may be a weird misfire, it's still pretty enjoyable, and I do recommend it. And even Coen Brothers completionists will find something about this to enjoy. If you somehow liked this video, why don't you like and subscribe, and see you next time.